Welcome to the second part of the third lesson in our Web Scraping to Build Social Research Data training series. In the first part, we looked at how we could use Python to extract text from a web page. In this quick second part, we're going to look at how we can repeat that process, but this time instead downloading a file from a web page. So we're going to use a quick example from my area of research, which is charitable organizations. So to research these organizations, I tend to use administrative data. That data is provided by a regulator and it's updated daily. So it's a real-time, continuously updated data set. So I'm sure you can see the advantages of having an automated, scheduled means of collecting that data for my research. So what I'm interested in is downloading the Register of Charities. So this is basically a census of charitable organizations that operate in England and Wales. So we'll follow the same 6-step process basically for web scraping any web page. But this time the slight difference is instead of extracting text or tables or lists, we're going to identify a file on a web page, request that, and then download it and save it somewhere on our machine locally. So here's the web page that I'm interested in. So as I said, there's a charity regulator in England and Wales, and it provides daily extracts of multiple different data sets. Got data sets relating to financial histories, trustees, governing documents, particular events that happen in charities, etc. But we're just simply interested in this example in the kind of complete list of registered charities in England and Wales. So this is the link to the web page, which then itself contains links to the files I need. So in essence, what I want is basically these links here. You can see as I hover, and down in the bottom corner, you can see a quick preview of what the link is. So this is then what I'm requesting. So instead of requesting this web page up here, by manually inspecting the web page, what I actually want to use Python to request are these links here, or one of them in this example. So again, you can see that the manual process of inspecting web pages, it's I think Brooker has called it the detective work of web scraping, and it is almost the most critical part of the process. In fact, the writing of code, as hopefully you can see, is actually relatively straightforward. It's well documented. There's plenty of examples, and here's one for you to follow yourself. The real work is digging into the structure of the web page, visually, and figuring out where the text of the file is and how that can be identified using HTML. So this is a very similar process to the first part of the lesson, so I won't spend too much time. So there's the preliminary step of importing modules that we need. And this is very simple. We don't need beautiful soup this time actually. We just need the requests module. So that's worked. So the URL that I define is, we can find it here. And it will be this one here. Yeah. So if I right click and I say copy link address, and I put that into my browser, you can see this is the link here to the data file. So again, I'm using a browser. I can manually just press enter, and then that'll start downloading the zip file to my machine. But again, I want to use Python to do that. If this was just a once every 3 or 4 months, then I probably wouldn't write a programming script. But actually this is something I do at least on a monthly basis, and not just for this file, but for all of these files. And it's also part of a wider project where for other countries I'm also scraping charity data, so there's a good case to be made for using web scraping as a data collection method. So let's just do essentially what I've done manually but using Python. So I'm going to request the web address of that file. It's a big enough file, so it'll take a few seconds longer than requesting a typical web page, but it still shouldn't take more than 10 to 15 seconds, hopefully. So again, you can see when there's an asterisk, that means the code is running, and now that it's completed, there's a number. You'd remember from part 1 that a status response code of 200 is a successful request of the web address. So excellent, so that's worked. Again, I can request metadata to do with the request. So again, you can see some kind of date information. When was the file last modified? Again, it's a daily update, and it was modified 2 o'clock this morning GMT time. And here's the date of when I've actually requested the data. You can see it's 10 to 11 in my time, and the server's an hour behind, so that's the discrepancy there. That is effectively it. So downloading files is a lot easier because you don't then have to tell Python we're working with a web page. You're not working with a web page, you're working with a link or a URL to a file. You request that link, and now essentially you save what you've requested, which is, in my case now, the zip file. So again, all I want to do here is basically create a file. So the original file has this kind of long kind of name here, but really what we're doing is downloading this file here, which is called publicextract.charity.zip. I just want to call it something else, that's the good thing about Python. I've requested a file and now I can save it under whatever name I want. So I'm going to give it a more meaningful name. So the Charity Commission for England and Wales, it's the Register of Charities, and I know it's a zip file. So I specify a file that I want to create. I open this file here and I open it in write mode. So it's slightly different than the write mode before. It's called the write binary mode. You don't need to worry about that, but if you're working with files, you want to use the WB option. And to that file, I want to write the content of what I requested, which is the file. It's a lot of abstract talking, so let's actually look at the results itself. And previously, we can open up the folder, we can look around, and I'll do that again to demonstrate, but we can use Python to check if it worked successfully. So again, I can list all of the files and folders in my current working directory. You can see from the part 1 of lesson 3, we've got the Moby Dick data that we scraped, so that's still there. And now you can see the CCEW Register of Charities file that I just created up here. It now exists. There's a bit more work now to unzip it because it's a zip file, so I can't just import it directly into Python. Thankfully, Python provides a way of dealing with zip files. So all I need now is the zip file module, and from that there's a zip file function, helpfully enough. So basically, take the file I've downloaded, open it in read mode, so I want to read in its contents, and then I want to extract everything in that zip file. So again, it might take a moment or two just because it's a reasonably large file. And now if I list the directory again, you can see that here's the zip file I downloaded, and here's the actual extracted file that is contained in the zip file, and it's called publicextract.charity.txt. And again, just to actually prove that this exists and it's real and I'm not just doing wee tricks with Python, I'm going to open that file again. I'm going to use a slightly different Python module to do that. It's called the pandas module. Really good for data management and kind of data formatting and marshalling. It's something we'll use a bit more in the next lesson, so don't worry about it now. I basically want to open up that file that I've extracted and randomly sample 5 observations or rows from the file. There's a couple of warnings because it's a TXT file, so Python has a bit of trouble importing the data in. That's nothing to do with Python. When I do it in Stata, I get the same kind of warning message. But you can see that the code does execute. It does open the file, and it does give me a random sample of 5 observations with information about registered charities in England and Wales. So here we can see charity numbers, the name of the charity, whether it's a company or a trust or a foundation, lots of other information that I'm interested in for my research and that you may be as well, also just for general purposes. So excellent. So that's 2 good examples of how we can use web scraping. So we can extract information in the form of text or tables or lists from a web page itself, and we can directly download files that are stored on web pages also. In the next lesson, we're going to move on to a bigger, more real example, which involves a bit more of intermediate or a bit more complicated Python programming. But again, we'll follow the exact same principles and the exact same process that we've implemented here. So looking forward to it.